So outside of the Daniels offseason debut this week, getting to work with veterans for the first time, every step he takes, every move he makes, we're going to be watching, noting, we're going to be opining and breaking down and predicting. Let's separate him for a second, okay? Non-Jayden Daniels storylines. What do you care about at OTAs? We can open up the phones at 800-636-1067. It's mid-May. This is not going to make or break the season, obviously, but there's interest, clearly. This is the team in town that dominates the attention, that has the biggest fan base. What are the things that you'll be monitoring?
So I don't think we can do much line tracking on both sides of the ball. Right? This is T-shirts and shorts. This is walkthroughs. This is 7-on-7s. So my biggest question is going to remain unanswered through OTAs, and that's the offensive line. So you'll notice a theme through all my answers here, by the way.
But can I say that you
Please do.
will at least get some answers on how they view some of the linemen?
Fair.
Usage, lining up, going through drills. Is Cornelius Lucas the first guy at left tackle? Do they think Brandon Coleman is a left tackle? Do they line him up there? Is he playing guard? Is he playing right tackle? How much work do they give a guy like Braden Daniels, who was drafted in the 4th round last year? Or is he down the depth chart seemingly when they're going through some of the rigors? I think some of that, like, you're not going to be able to determine how good Brandon Coleman is, or was Nick Allegretti projected as a starter the right decision, to your point. But at least you can get an idea of how they're viewing guys.
Yeah, how they think it is worthwhile, I suppose, just to offer that caveat. But to me, my questions will remain unanswered until they're blocking people that are trying to make tackles. You'll notice a theme to all my answers as we go back and forth here. Number one, Jahan Dotson. What is it? Was the previous regime right 2 years ago, or were they wrong last year? If this group says we don't need to go shopping for another wide receiver, we got one here, he's going to be better than you guys think. We didn't have to go into free agency. We didn't have to do what the Bears did to go get Keenan Allen or somebody else. We didn't have to do that because we have a bona fide, solid second receiver here that's good for 800-900 yards, half a dozen touchdowns, etc. Opposite Terry McLaurin. If he's good, this offense makes sense to me. If he's not, that's a major question.
I'm excited to see what the new look defense looks like when they put the starting 11 together. There's going to be a lot of competition from now until week 1. There will be injuries along the way and an attrition rate. So this is not put in Sharpie, right? But they have thrown a lot of bodies at a problem that was one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year. They didn't go get stars, really, other than future Hall of Famer Bobby Wagner, who did lead the league in tackles and still has some football left. He'll be your Mike linebacker. Also, Frankie Louvu was brought in free agency. I love him. I think he's a terrific, high-energy, physical player. He's the kind of guy I always say about TJ Oshie with the Capitals. He's the dude that drags them into the fight, and you kind of know what I mean if you watch the Capitals. I think Frankie Louvu is that kind of guy on a football field. He is the guy that you're at the bar, and he's mixing it up with 3 or 4 guys, and next thing you know, he's standing up for someone, and we're all getting into it because we're with him. Frankie Louvu is that type of player, I think, in the middle of a defense and leader. But there's not as much high-impact acquisition as you might have liked. I think Mike Sandra still is going to help a lot in the nickel second-round pick out of Michigan. I'm excited to see what Jeremy Chin is as a fit in this defense. I love the Quinn-Joe Witt pairing as it pertains to getting more out of DBs than we were able to get out of DBs the last couple of years in this town. And maybe Chin elevates his game from Carolina as well. The defensive end position, I just don't think they got enough. Dorrance Armstrong is a starter. The other guys are kind of tweener, basically rotational pieces. I'm talking Clellan Ferrell, Dante Fowler, KJ Henry, F.A. Obata, Andre Jones. So I think they're short there. But I do think this defense will be a lot better, and I'm just excited to see what is their vision for that starting 11.
Austin Eckler, and really the running back spot by and large. How much burst? How much quickness? Is it injury plagued and that was what happened, or the beginning of kind of a descent into the back half of his career? If they got a guy that's similar to what he was maybe a couple of years ago as a scat back, a guy that can make people miss, that's a bulldozer close to the goal line, you got yourself a weapon on a bargain. If Austin Eckler is legit, again, this offense could look a lot different.
I don't know that we'll get this answer in full over these few days, or really at any point in OTAs in the weeks ahead. But what is their plan for a guy like Jamin Davis? I mentioned Louvu. I'll throw him into this conversation as well. You and I talked when they signed Louvu and when this staff came to be. Maybe they use these guys as pass rushers to make up for the lack of edge production that they're going to get. Why couldn't you have Jamin Davis stand up and get downhill? He was good at that when he's been used in that
That's
area.
right.
It's actually, in my opinion, the one thing he's done at an above average level. There are other ways where he's been fine. There are ways certainly where he struggled. But I think when he's coming downhill, getting after the quarterback, like seek and destroy missions where he's just being fast and running in open space, I think he's actually pretty good in that regard. Can they use him, whether it's off the edge? I'm not pretending like he's Micah Parsons, but move him around a little bit and let him be a pass rusher. And I would say the same about Louvu. Louvu was the best pass rusher on Carolina last year, and he was their Mike linebacker. But if you watch games, go back. He's coming off the edge like a defensive end occasionally. They're having him blitz from the Mike spot downhill in the A gap. They are occasionally putting him with his hand in the dirt. He just kind of was a Swiss Army knife a little bit. I just trust this defensive group to get a lot out of a guy like that. So I want to see whatever amount we can over these practices, like where these guys are lining up, and are they going to do the thing I dream of that Jack Del Rio just never did, which was actually get creative and move guys around.
Ben Sinnott and his usage. Is he just the backup tight end to Zach Ertz, which would be a grave disappointment to me? Or is he H-back one play, tight end the next play, split out wide the third play, in the backfield on the fourth play, lining up in motion, strong side, weak side, everything in between? How are they using him? Were they right to maybe draft him around or so earlier than everybody thought because they found their use check? They found their Kittle. They found somebody that can be diverse on offense. They can do a lot of different things. Are we going to know that early on? Or is it just, yeah, he'll run, 5-yard, a choice route, catch the ball, go down like John Bates, or maybe he'll be an inline blocker. If he's special, if he's what they maybe think, then again, this offense could look a lot different.
Speaking of usage of a weapon, did you see where they had Luke McCaffrey lining up today?
I did not.
Not in the slot.
Oh.
But at X. Behind Terry McLaurin as an X receiver. Now, I think you'd lose a lot of bets if you started making bets on plans based on the routes you were running against the air on the first day of OTAs. But I know just watching the little bit of the live practice a couple hours ago when the team was streaming out some content with Logan Paulson, he took note of that. And it's something right away that I saw, which was a lot of us are saying Luke McCaffrey is going to be their 11 personnel inside slot wide receiver. But you probably draft him where they did, the third round, if you feel like he can help you at multiple wide receiver positions. And he was right behind Terry going through the drills as if, he was a potential X option for them as well as like a wide receiver one with those types of responsibilities in this offense, which I found intriguing. The number for you guys at 800-636-1067 if you want to join us. Take Jayden Daniels out of the equation. That's the easy answer. What do you find yourself most interested in when it comes to OTAs this week? Let's go to Kevin, who's in Arlington on Grant and Danny. What's up, Kev?
Hey, Kev.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I'm super interested in the edge players on both lines, meaning the athleticism and burst of our young tackle Coleman, our young tight end H-back Sinnott, our young tight end Rogers, and then on the other side, because I want to see more of Lawrence Armstrong. Honestly, I didn't focus in on him at Dallas. I want to see, what kind of athleticism and burst he has. KJ Henry, has he evolved? Louvu, as you mentioned, Grant, he's, he has pass rush ability. I would imagine they will position him out on the edge at times. And lastly, does Fowler have anything left? At one time, Fowler was a heck of a situational edge rusher. So I guess I'm just interested in that aspect of the team. Are we going to be improved there athletically, burst, explosivity-wise, in both offensive and defensive circles?
It's a good phone call.
Thanks,
Thanks, buddy. To his point, if you were going to bet on one of these edges, not Armstrong, who's going to play the most by far. He seems more like an 8 to 10 sack guy, but I guess it's possible he could break out. But if you were going to bet on one of the other guys to have a breakthrough season where they get you like 7.5 sacks, which would help a ton. I know it's not all about sacks, but someone's got to get
It's a byproduct of the good
exactly.
stuff, yeah.
Clelin Ferrell, Dante Fowler, Or I would throw in the other guys, KJ Henry, Andre Jones, F.A. Obata, Javante Jean-Baptiste, who they just drafted out of Notre Dame. If somebody else gives them legit pass rushing statistical production, who do you think it would be?
Fowler's my answer.
Just because you've seen him do it.
Because I've seen him do it, and I think he'll be used in a, we're not here to have you take on left tackles on first and second down. We're not here to play you on rush downs. When we know they're passing, they know they're passing, you're going to line up next to a space eater or maybe someone dynamic like John Allen or maybe, some stunts and games and different things. I think that guy could be used correctly and get you 6-7 sacks.
He had 4 last year. He's got 10 in the last 2 years and 14 and a half in the last 3 years. One of the other things I like about Fowler, who would be my answer maybe as well, Dan Quinn sought him out, right? He went and found and said, look, he talked to the agent and the player, presumably, and he said, I want you. I was with you for 2 years. I saw what you can do. So he knows all the strengths and all the weaknesses, and he wanted him on his roster. And that went around all off season long, right? I mean, Dorrance Armstrong came from Dallas, clearly. Tyler Biotish came from the Cowboys. So we saw there was Rivera-esque interest in like keeping his band together. But you'd have to imagine there's just less of a process of feeling him out, figuring out what Dante Fowler can do. I already got my plan for him. I show up with that manual ready to go because I did it for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not a big Farrell guy. I
just don't think he's a decent player, but I think he is a compliment to Fowler. And like what he does well and what Fowler does well are a little different. Do you think Farrell's a pass rusher? Like I think of him more
I don't really
as that playing the run. Not that he did that great, but I think in the perfect world, you play him opposite Armstrong on first and second, and Fowler comes in on the pass.
That's kind of my idea. And I don't have a better way to say it than this. He's like the boring defensive end. He's like the stay-at-home, do your job, nothing special, so that the other guys can, maybe you make contact with the guard so that John Allen can loop around, or Deron Payne. You're sort of the blocker, so the guy that's in the way, space eater type stuff. I just don't see him as dynamic. He's not who Oakland drafted him to be years ago.
I'm excited to see if KJ Henry can take a step forward. He was so highly recruited out of high school, was a beloved college prospect early on, fell in the draft after, frankly, just not producing the numbers and the counting stats at that position you need to. And he flashed a few times, I thought, in the second half of last year. Maybe he ends up being a nice find and a win for the previous regime eventually.